right, here with more reaction to the president's message to our European allies is former U.S. Army intel officer, former advisor to U.S. and NATO commanders, Andrew Peek, along with former CIA intel analyst Fred Fleitz. Guys, thanks so much for coming in. Andrew, we're going to start with you. What do you think about the way that the president has handled, and we'll start with the NATO contribution, the 2% into your own defense. I don't think anybody ever really talked about the fact that so many of these countries never really met that obligation. The president has a way of almost shaming people by publicly putting it out there that you're not coming to the bargaining table. Why would I say that we're all going to defend each other, that a strike on one is a strike on all, when you guys aren't, you're not equipped to defend me? Why should I defend you?
Absolutely. And, I was struck by the fact that this position caused so much hysteria among the foreign policy establishment and the media, when in fact, asking our NATO allies to pay more in terms of defense funding has been a policy of the United States for the past 4 decades, going back to the Nixon administration. I mean, Henry Kissinger writes about this in his memoirs. And so I think, like many of Trump's originally seemingly outlandish positions, this is one that actually bears some fruit and makes a lot of sense.
And Fred, what do you think?
Well, I agree with that, but what I think is so interesting about this trip to Poland is how President Trump is trying to set the stage for the G20 summit, which I think was going to be very tense. He was going to be lectured by other nations. There probably are going to be protests against him. But he's going to Poland. He's laying out his agenda. He's backing an ally very strongly, sending a message to Russia. And I think he's basically saying to Germany and to other nations in the G20, this is our policy. I'm not going to be intimidated. And, let's roll.
Yeah, it doesn't say. I don't think he'll be intimidated by much, but you're right. He probably will get a lecturing, but I don't know that he'll adhere to too much of it. Andrew, we'll go back to you for a second. The big meeting everybody's talking about is the Putin meeting. In the wake of what we just heard in that speech, and the president really not showing a lot of support for Vladimir Putin in that speech, how do you think that changes this meeting coming up here in about 48 hours?
Yeah, gosh, I think it makes it better for us and worse for Putin. Again, even in these impromptu remarks the president just delivered on energy security, I was surprised at how anti-Russian his tone was. He spoke over and over again about energy independence and the Black Sea pipeline. Well, the reason the United States is creating a Black Sea pipeline with Eastern European states is to prevent Russia from bullying countries like Ukraine, like Poland, like Romania, like Bulgaria, with their gas monopoly, with their energy supplies. So Putin looks at those words, even those offhand, unscripted words, and says, hey, the president's thinking long-term about how to circumvent Russian influence and prevent Russia from dominating Eastern Europe, which perhaps we might have hoped for given his rhetoric on the campaign trail.
Fred, there are the economic implications, and there are also the implications where Russia is involved in terms of Syria, ISIS, Bashar al-Assad, and then we have the situation that is now going on with North Korea, and how Russia has had conversations with China wanting both of us, America, the United States, and South Korea, to halt, at least temporarily, our large-scale military action or drills in that area. What do you think will be discussed there on both of those counts?
I think the president has quite a lot to talk about concerning Syria and ISIS and North Korea. But concerning his approach to Russia and what was said today about these economic deals and energy deals with Eastern Europe, the president wants to negotiate from a position of strength. He's meeting with Putin. Putin knows that the president has all the other deals going with. If he wants to deal with the president, Mr. Putin's going to have to negotiate. And the president is putting forward an agenda that's going to give Putin a lot to think about.
So perhaps bringing the economics up as means of, to have a little bit of leverage when it comes to Syria or North Korea.
That's exactly right. I mean, I think our approach to Russia before the Obama administration was basically we walked in and we were basically walked over. Remember, the last meeting that was held on the situation in Syria that Russia held was held between Russia, Turkey, and Iran. That didn't even bother to invite the United States. Our credibility was so low. I think our credibility, based on what Mr. Trump announced just today, is very significant, and he's going in to meet with Putin in a position of strength.
Andrew, I'll ask you first. Do you think Vladimir Putin and President Trump get along?
Interestingly, I think they do. I think they're both very confident in their own strength. I think they're both very confident in their own national power. and frankly confident in using national power. You know, you asked earlier about why America First rubs Western European elites so badly. And it's because they and the people like the Poles have very different experiences with nationalism. They blame nationalism and things like America First for starting World War II. But in Poland, they look at Polish nationalism and a belief in individualism as one of the factors that allowed them to shuck off communism and Russian domination. So I think that's really, I think Putin and Trump see eye to eye, at least on the sense of their own uniqueness and the power of their countries.
Yeah, in terms of Poland's experience, that's actually one of the other things that President Trump is going to include in his speech. We heard Kristen Fisher talking about some of it. He's going to say that the Polish experience, as you were just speaking to that, reminds us that the defense of the West ultimately rests not only on means, but also on the will of its people to prevail. So exactly what you were just talking about.
Yeah, very interesting. All right. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been a good talk. It's been an interesting morning there in Poland. Thank you so much.